All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of the 316 Investor. Today we've got quite the episode for you. We have our president of the National Association of Realtor, Leslie Rauda Smith, who will be accompanying today with us and kind of going over all the benefits of why being a NAR member is super important and crucial in today's industry. Followed by Leslie, we also have Ryan Gavin, our co-host with Kind Lending. He's a loan officer here located in Oregon. And I myself, Raymond Coburn, your licensed in Oregon realtor, broker, investor, YouTuber, podcaster, and like to get started. So Leslie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure. Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. So just kind of wanted to touch on a couple aspects of maybe introducing yourself and seeing if everybody can kind of get to know you a little bit as Leslie.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. So I am a Buckeye at heart and a graduate of the Ohio State University. For
Nice.
anybody out there from Ohio, OH, because we have to do that. That's how we
Nice.
know how to spell it. But since I was raised in real estate, my dad had a company that was called HER Realtors, which were his initials, and it grew to be one of the larger independents in the country. And then he had a franchise division that was under Home Services with Berkshire Hathaway called Real Living, but it did not survive COVID, unfortunately.
Mm,
My father was the 1991 president of NAR. I was the 2022 president of NAR. So I'm the second generation president since our founding, which was in 1908. About 2/3 of our members are women, but
wow.
I was only the seventh woman president in all
Wow.
those years. So we're working on that. We have another woman coming up in 2027. So I'm looking forward to her term as our president. We certainly have a lot of great men that are in there as well. But I was the only president to preside over a majority female leadership team in our entire history. So hope I see more of that in the future as well. But it's quite an honor to be here with both of you, Ray and Ryan, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Leslie, for that introduction. So, Leslie, as you being the president of NAR, why would an agent coming into whether they're new or maybe as a veteran real estate agent in the field, why would they want to be a part of the National Association of Realtors?
Well, there are so many benefits that come with being a member of NAR, and there are so many benefits that most people have no clue about. And I'd probably say that 99+% of our members have no idea what their association does for us. There's a lot of things that are done while we're out listing and selling property. And we have the top nonpartisan PAC in the country. We have amazing lobbyists that work every angle, every side. We are not Democrat, Republican, Independent, or Libertarian. We are the Realtor Party, and we like to support things that are in our favor or home ownership that help us in our profession or private property rights and home ownership. And there's so much that goes along with that people are not aware of. And hopefully we'll get into that a little bit more later.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for that. And
Mhm.
so, as a member myself, I have definitely utilized being a realtor myself and an R member to actually gain some recognition within my community and within the professional service area that I provide. And I'm able to basically tell them about why being an R member and our code of ethics, why that's so important. But a lot of questions that I have is why is setting the bar higher as a NAR member so important?
Well, first of all, our professionalism is of the utmost importance, but it's so difficult when you're the largest trade association in the world with more than 1.5 million members. And we have that people that are in different kinds of business models. Some of them don't even know who their broker is. There isn't a broker available if there's a question or if there's a problem with a contract or an amendment or whatever it might be. And we've been through, this goes back to like 2008. We had a blue ribbon panel that was to kind of decide, is it too hard or too easy to get a real estate license? But what people don't understand is licenses are issued by states. NAR has nothing to do with getting licensed, suspensions, terminations, or anything. And it's interesting, when I was president, I would get letters from people, you really should revoke Susie Q or John Doe's license. And I'm like, you know what? Why don't you go back and look at your license and see who issued it? And that might be who you should reach out to. And it's just interesting how many people don't know that. But to be able to use the word realtor as part of what you do, you must be a member of the National Association of Realtors. And it's like the three-legged stool. We have NAR at the national level, then of course your state associations, and then the local association. So that makes up our three-legged stool.
Awesome. Yes, I for one love using the word realtor, because now I'm not just like a sales agent or just like the agent.
Right.
Because agent kind of makes you sound like a 007 character, and I'm
Exactly.
like, I'm not a 007. I
That's
have
right.
I have I have I have a title, and that within that title comes that membership, and I think that's so important. As far as being an R member, what are some of the benefits you might be able to touch on there, Leslie?
Okay, so I wrote down a list of this so I wouldn't forget anything. But one thing that I think is fascinating is that we have the largest real estate library in the world. There's all kinds of white papers, research papers, market data. We even have librarians and the Dewey Decimal System. I mean, it is a pretty good sized library. It is housed in our Chicago building, which is where our headquarters are. And I remember when I was told about that a few decades ago, and I was like, a real library? And so I went in there and I met the librarian and walked around. I thought, wow, I had no idea this existed, but it was in the building I was in all the time. So that's something that I think is so important. But along those same lines, we have Lawrence Yoon, who is our chief economist, as well as Jessica Lautz, who is our deputy chief economist. And the work that they do is amazing.
Wow.
They do every year a buyer profile, a seller profile, sustainability profile. Matter of fact, I was asked to speak in Las Vegas in January to the International Home Stagers. And then I thought, why did I agree to speak to them? I don't know anything about home staging. Thankfully, Lawrence was at our local association. I said, Lawrence, I hope you and Jessica can help me. He said, yep, we did a profile on home staging. I said, oh, you're saving me. I appreciate it. Anyway, it was so awesome that I got permission to give it to all of the people in attendance at their conference. And when I asked Lawrence if that was okay, he said, yeah, you're welcome to share it with anybody, no problem. So I just love that attitude of all that research. And if you're not going to nar.realtor and seeing what's available to you and looking at what your member benefits are, you are missing out, because there is so much there. Another thing that is probably, besides advocacy, I would say one of your number one benefits is RPR, Realtor Property Resource, which has the largest database of properties in the country. And it is a part of the National Association of Realtors. You pay for it in your dues. It's $13.50 a year. So just over $1 a month. And I can assure you, if you're not using it, your competitors are. So if you're not, you need to figure out how to use that, implement that in your business, and make it part of your presentations. So I would highly recommend that as well. Of course, there's all kinds of professional development, designations, certifications that you can get for anything you can think of. Doesn't matter if you're in commercial, there's, appraisal, anything, there's just everything you can imagine is there for you. But do not forget about all of the data that is there, that is available to you, because there is a lot of data that can help you in your business, whether it be with sellers, buyers. I did give you a list, Ray, of those URLs, which I'm sure you'll put up when you put this together. But there's some
Definitely.
really great information. And I will get to the lawsuit stuff that's been going on, but I'm going to repeat this probably more than once, but do not forget to go to facts, FACTS dot realtor, facts.realtor, and that is updated very consistently with what is going on, how to do your business, what you should and shouldn't do. So we'll get to more of that in a minute, but I just want to make sure that you know about that. We have a lot on safety. Safety was a big issue for me. I wanted to make sure every realtor comes home safely. every single night.
Awesome.
And we do have a dangerous job, and you always need to be thinking ahead and don't think that something couldn't happen to you, because I personally have friends who have had things happen to them. If you are a manager or a broker owner and you need info for your office meetings, there's so much information at NAR.Realtor. Every month is something different at NAR, whether it's home ownership month, safety month, designation month, but there are videos on all of these things at NAR.Realtor. So on safety month, you'll get some safety videos and show those in your office meeting. You really don't have to think about anything for your office meetings. There is that much information at NAR.Realtor. The REACH program is something that I love. We are the originators of the original Shark Tank, and that is our REACH program. Our REACH program, we have more than 200 tech companies that we, as the National Association of Realtors, are invested in. And it's like a think tank where we mentor them, and we obviously are able to share their services or products with our membership to help them get out of the gates and get going. So it's been hugely successful. Every year we have our IOI summit, and we have a pitch battle where some of these companies get up and they have 4 minutes to pitch their product or service. And I just love it. It's so much fun. One of the things they do that, I know this sounds so cruel, but when you're in the audience, it's actually kind of fun. If you go over 4 minutes, your mic just cuts off and no one can hear anything you're saying. So it really makes you be on your toes and, know what you're talking about and get it in that 4 minutes. And then there are judges that vote on it, but it's really neat. There's another newer thing with NAR. It's called Drive with NAR, and it's a podcast. I would check that out if I were you at NAR.Realtor. One thing a lot of our members don't know about is we have a lot of global members. It used to be we would have about 3,000 of our global members that would come to our fall conference in November. It's cut back quite a bit since COVID, but I'm sure eventually it will pick back up. But some of the countries didn't even allow people in their country until last year. So we will slowly make a comeback. But it's important to note that we have about 80 countries that are part of the National Association of Realtors and 110 bilateral agreements. So I'm going to give you a real quick example of me when I was president and I got to go to Dubai, and I signed a bilateral agreement with the Dubai Land Department. So keep in mind, we're in a Middle Eastern country. A woman is on stage representing Dubai Land Department, and then there's me as the national president and a woman. I'm up there on stage signing this agreement, looking out in this huge ballroom with all these television cameras and literally seeing women crying and men. And I thought, wow, I need to really take this in. This is historical. And it really was. It's one of my greatest memories of my year as president. But we do a lot with our global entities. They are just a huge part of what we do. There's a designation that's a CIPS, Certified International Property Specialist. So if anybody's interested in getting in global, that is where I would begin. There are a lot of great instructors for the CIP classes, but like I said, there's tons of designations and certifications out there. For those of you who don't know, we have .Realtor. You've heard me say that many times. Do not forget. I've had people say, so what is it? Is it nar.realtor.com? No, it's .Realtor. It's nar.realtor. But guess what? You too can have your name .Realtor and .Real Estate. We own those top level domains. So just know that as a member that you can get those. We also have the Realtor store. You could use that possibly for closing gifts, or if you just want some swag for your team or your office or whatever it might be. Jordan, who runs the Realtor store, does an amazing job. You might just want to go check that out. RRF is the Realtor Relief Foundation, and as we know, we have an enormous amount of natural disasters that have been happening over the last several years. You do not have to be a realtor to participate in it. Everything, 100% of all donations go to the people in need. So NAR fronts everything we need in the way of administrative help to get everything taken care of and the applications reviewed when they come in. So something that's very important to so many of us when we see people hurting. And, we had realtors that lost their homes in the fires in Ruidosa. And then, of course, we just had Hurricane Debbie come through Florida and all the way up. Matter of fact, my cousin in Ohio was without power, and they say it might be a week. And I thought, oh, well, you better come visit me then. But anyway, it's nice that we have the ability to do that. And just to give you a little history, that was started after 9/11. So that's what got our Realtor Relief Foundation started. We also have another thing that has a lot of social media assets and resources called PhotoFi. And you can get that. You can look at that at nar.realtor. Just put it in the search bar and it will take you there. But there's a lot of great assets you can use, email signatures, things that you may want to use for posting, whether it be on social media or just, in your own emails or whatever it might be. Just remember, though, that it's so important. Our local, state, and National Association of Realtors are so important to what we do on a daily basis. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more. But that gives you just a little taste. One other real quick thing. I just want to give you an example of a friend of mine said to me, we were getting rental cars for some realtor event. And she said, have you gotten yours yet? And I said, well, I've been looking, but gosh, they're expensive. She said, did you go through the NAR site? And I said, no. I don't know why I didn't even think of that. She said, well, I just saved $204. Well, there's your annual dues, folks. So if you need a rental car, get one. But there's a whole lot of other stuff. That's just one thing. So please go to nar.realtor and see what is available to you.
Awesome. Yeah. So going back to how NAR helps its realtors in disaster relief type situations like that, a little bit of insight on myself. A couple years ago, I worked for Verizon and in the corporate side, and I was a tech support. And one of the customers called in, and basically he called and he put his phone out the window, and it sounded like a train, like multiple trains coming. And I said, okay, hello, because sometimes we get some weird calls like that. And he was like, can you hear that noise? That right there is hurricane. I forgot what the hurricane was. And I want to know what Verizon's going to do to keep me connected to my family when that thing is pushing me out to sea. And I was like,
where you at?
What is going on? And at this time, Verizon had not released any notice about what they were going to be doing. We knew this hurricane was coming. So within that first phone call, I was able to reach out to one of the directors of Verizon, and they immediately released these big, huge tank trucks with these portable antennas.
Oh, wow.
And they provided service to a lot of the customers that needed service in that area. That was a lot of people lost their lives during that time. And it all started with my phone call, my connection to them.
Well, good for you, because I'll tell you, that's pretty scary.
Thank you, yes. And then about 2 days after, I get a call from an internal call from within Verizon, and it was one of the managing directors for all the supervisors within Verizon. And they said, Ray, I just wanted to thank you. My husband was stationed in Florida, and I hadn't seen him for about 5 years, and I'd lost connection with him. I thought he'd passed away. And because your quick response created that connection and your immediate ability to get that deployed, helped me stay in contact with him. And I was like, wow, this is phenomenal. And so I can definitely relate to that immediate response that NAR has for its realtors. And that's the reason why I wanted to have this interview today, was to kind of shine the light on NAR in all of its great benefits that it does provide. And I think it's very crucial that a lot of folks that are thinking about NAR in any aspect definitely know about all the great things. And as a business owner myself, in many different aspects, not everything always goes, peachy keen. It's not always like that. There are always going to be some type of falls. And nothing is perfect. We don't live in a perfect world, and that's just kind of the way things are. However, with that being said, moving forward, there are a lot of great benefits that NAR has to do. Same thing with Verizon before. There's a lot of great things that NAR or that Verizon did and still does today. Same thing that NAR does. And however a lot of folks may feel about the situation with NAR, there is a lot of great aspects with NAR as we are covering today. And I think moving forward is a huge reward for those that are wanting to educate themselves about NAR and wanting to work with NAR.
Sure, I would agree. There's so much people don't know.
And
hopefully we're going to learn a lot today.
Yes, definitely. And one of the great reasons why I like working and being a member of NAR is its golden rule. So if you can kind of touch on, Leslie, why the golden rule is the golden rule and why was that adopted within NAR?
Well, I mean, I think we all want to be treated and treat others the way, not just the way we want to be treated, but the way they want to be treated. And, there's a lot of things that go with that in our profession, particularly communications. So how do your clients and customers want you to communicate with them? And that's your job to find that answer and then proceed accordingly. Some people like to text and they don't ever want to talk on the phone. And then sometimes we have people that they're the opposite and they would rather you call them than to text them. So, and I think sometimes that might have to do with a generational thing. But I remember when our son got into real estate and his voicemail said, "Hey, this is Austin. Text me because if you leave me a message, I won't call you back." And I said, "Wow, how long do you expect to be in our profession?" And he said, "Well, Mom, that's how we roll at my age." I said, "Guess what? Not everybody that you work with is your age." Yeah. So you need to figure it out for each one and remember the golden rule. But anyway, I've always laughed about that because he just thought that was fine because that's his generation. And I said, "That's great for your generation, but that's only one generation, honey. There's a whole bunch out there that you need to think about." And he's learned and he's been in the business long enough, but we still laugh about that.
Right. And so I always kind of wondered, NAR being National Association of Realtors, where is it located? Where is the NAR?
So our headquarters are on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, right next to the Wrigley building. And it's a fabulous location by the river. And we have a new sky level that was finished during COVID. And it is just fabulous. And the Realtor building stands out because it's really, really that beautiful. And gosh, I can't think of the guy that just died. He was on a show. Anyway, the beginning of the show where he threw his hat in the air was in the revolving doors of the entry of the National Association of Realtors. There's a lot of little archive things I know. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I store those things in my mind. We also have our building that faces our nation's capital on New Jersey Avenue in Washington, D.C., and that's where our lobby efforts, among other things, take place. And then we have a building in Cincinnati is where the Central Lock boxes, that is where that is housed in Cincinnati. So we have 3 locations. Most people don't know about the third one, but I think they're beginning to learn more and more about it because more people are headed over to the Central Lock side of things, and they are manufactured in our country.
Nice. Definitely. That's pretty cool. As far as the NAR mission, what if you could summarize NAR's mission, what would you say it is?
Well, I would say that more than anything, we want to help realtors in their profession to be better at what they do and be more successful. But I would say some of the really powerful things that we do, obviously the professionalism and all the courses that are available. And there are all kinds of things, whether it be, how to invest in a self-employed pension program, whether it's 1031 exchanges, whatever it is, there's classes on all kinds of these things that are very, very helpful. But in my personal opinion, I think our advocacy side is what really is the number one thing for the National Association of Realtors and for us as members. There's a lot of things that NAR does that people just don't realize it just gets done. And they just thought that, some genius was just out there in the middle of the night and woohoo, there it is. So just to give you a little bit of an example, we represent all home ownership and private property rights, which includes commercial, retail, whatever it might be. And so we work on all those different angles and how can we help or be better, like repurposing maybe commercial property and retail property with home, a place to live, condos or whatever, because of the shortage that we've had. So we've certainly had a lot of talks with that. With this settlement that we're dealing with right now, the three entities that will be hurt the most are first-time home buyers, low-income buyers, and our veterans. So the VA has come through right now, temporarily allowing commissions or compensation to be rolled into the loan for veterans. And it's not a permanent thing, but right now it's going to get us through until the next step. We do a lot with flood insurance, and whether you live in an area prone to flood or not, you still could have floods where you live. Everybody could, and there's a bigger part of the country that affects than people realize, and it's not just coastal. I mean, look at this hurricane that's going up the east and even into the Midwest, and look at all the rain and the damage that it's doing along the way. So we are all affected by these things. For anyone who got the PPP, the Payment Protection Plan during the pandemic, you can thank the National Association of Realtors for that. That was the first time in the history of our country that independent contractors were part of a stimulus program. So that is huge. One thing I will say, though, because I think this is hugely important, especially for those that are not involved. When you look at what your state has done to pass or defeat bills in your favor, you should take a pencil and put it to the best year you've ever had in real estate and see how much it would have cost you if you didn't have people volunteering and working behind the scenes to make everything we do, and same with anybody who owns property, better. And there's so much to be said for that. In Texas, we don't call it RPAC, we call it Tree Pack. But I can tell you, we do an amazing job. Many, many years ago, I told someone, I said, I'll tell you what, here we call it the Tree Pack calculator. I said, here, take this, use the best year you've ever had and fill in these numbers. In 1 year, they would have paid more than $100,000 additional fees and taxes if we had not passed or defeated things in our favor. And this was 15 years ago. So now you take that number, and I guarantee you it's at least 2 to 3 times that. And 99.9% of our realtor members have no clue what is going on while you're out there listing and selling. Again, people just think things magically happen. That is not the way it is done. There are hardworking people and volunteers and staff making sure that the things that matter the most get taken care of. When the pandemic hit, the reason why we were able to stay in business was because of all of the efforts of our lobbyists in DC fighting for our right to continue to list and sell real estate. There was only one state that didn't, and they finally were able to get them to open. It took a little while, and it was so frustrating for them because 49 states and the territories were all open. So it just goes to show you just how much work the National Association of Realtors and your state and local associations do. And I mean, it is amazing. And if you don't know what they've done for you, you need to. And the other thing I'll also throw out there is, if you're not registered to vote and you're not voting, you're not setting a very good example. And all of us should be registered. All of us should be voting, and we should know what we're voting for and why. We shouldn't just say, hey, how should I check these boxes here, and just have a friend tell you. You need to know. Because I'll tell you, when you're at a listing appointment, I always use this example. When I was chairman of the Texas Realtors, we had a Proposition 1 that had a homestead exemption that was increased, among other things. And I said, how many of you people in this big ballroom are talking to your sellers about Prop 1 and why it's so important to vote for it and get your family and neighbors to do the same? And not one hand went up in that ballroom. And I said, can you imagine if you were at a listing appointment right now and you told Mr. and Mrs. Seller about Prop 1 and then said, oh, are you going to interview other realtors? And when they say, well, actually, we have 2 more appointments this afternoon, say, oh, great. Why don't you ask them what they think about Prop 1? And you know what the odds of them having a clue what Prop 1 is? Real close to zero. And then you get the listing. So learn, listen, attend classes, pay attention, know more than just how to list and sell houses. Know what's going on behind the scenes that gives you the ability to do so.
Nice. Thank you for that. That is something that I definitely use in my listings as well.
Yeah,
And I can tell you that it definitely works by
it
standing.
does.
Like I've had to compete with like three or four other agents. And I was chosen out of the three or four other agents just simply
Good for
based off of the
you.
things that I know. And those agents have, obviously been in the business longer than I have, but I just tend to know more because all this stuff when I do something, I try to overanalyze it and I get really in depth in it. And that's why I love working with and getting the facts straight from actual leading professionals such as yourself, Leslie. And then there are a couple other people that we also have scheduled for this coming week here in podcast too that'll kind of be breaking down a lot of other items. So Leslie, one more question, and then I'll kind of let you go into the lawsuit part and then maybe like a closing summary. But one more question was, when was, and this right here is kind of a lot of agents have a generalized question about NAR, and when was the NAR Code of Ethics introduced and why?
So we were founded in 1908, and the Code of Ethics was founded in 1919. So it's over 100 years old. It's just that, that's the difference between a realtor and a licensee. A licensee is not a realtor unless you're a member of the National Association of Realtors. If you're a member of one association, you're a member of all three legs of the associations. And the Code of Ethics is what we abide by. If you're a licensee, you're not a member of the National Association of Realtors, you do not have a code of ethics to abide by. So that's the difference between us and them.
Nice, nice. And so now I'll kind of open it up and let you kind of touch on your what everybody's kind of been wanting to know.
Yes.
The bread and butter of today's kind of podcast was kind of wanting to know where are we at right now on this NAR lawsuit, and how is it impacting our industry? And
So I would say, first of all, I was elected in May of 2019 to be 2022 president. And that's when all the fun hit. So I've been so lucky to be a part of it all the way through. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail. I'm not an attorney, and there are state laws that may prevail or may not. Your broker is who you really need to talk with because that's who's going to guide you. And if you don't have a broker that knows about this and knows what they're doing, then I would change brokers or retire, because this is not the time to be with somebody who has no clue what is going on. We all need guidance to make sure we do this the right way. So we had an agreement with the Department of Justice in about November, December of 2020. And then about 7 or 8 months later, they reneged on the agreement. That we had 4 things we had to change, which we did. And then they reneged on it, which was the first time in the history of our country that they had reneged on an agreement before. So that was interesting. We ended up suing the Department of Justice. We won. They appealed. And it's just been going back and forth. I don't even know where we are now. Last I heard that they're in the driver's seat, but you never know. You blink and it might change again. Who knows? But we have had 17 seller lawsuits, class action, 2 buyer, and then the Department of Justice. So just 20. That's all. And that was just, like for now. Who knows what is yet to come? Because unfortunately, it breeds a lot of copycat lawsuits, and we have certainly seen that, and hence 17 class action lawsuits regarding the seller side. So the settlement has been mind-blowing to most all of us. It's certainly put a dent in a lot of our companies that have a lot of the agents that work with them. It's been pretty stressful for all of us to have to think about, because I know one thing about being raised in real estate: realtors don't like change, and this one's a big one. One thing I would give a word of caution and advice: there are a lot of private groups on social media that I've learned a lot. Some people say it's better to stay away from them, but I kind of like to see what, if somebody has a question about something, or how would you handle this scenario? I think it's always good to see, like, maybe somebody has an idea you haven't thought of. that might help you in your business if that objection comes to you at a listing appointment or working with a buyer. So I learned from that, and I think a lot of other people do. But the one thing that I have been more shocked at than anything is how many realtors actually think this is a joke. And they get in these private groups and say the dumbest things I've ever heard. Like, there was one the other day that's, it said, I'm going to have my listing price end in these two certain numbers as your clue. And then the person put fight me NAR. And so I don't normally engage in any of this stuff, but I just said I wouldn't worry about NAR, but I would worry about the Department of Justice. I don't think the author of that has seen my comment, because if he did, he'd probably take it down if he had an ounce of common sense. But it's still up as of a few hours ago. There are others in there that they're working on workarounds. Don't try to work around. Do what we are supposed to do. And one thing I've heard numerous times from pretty good sources is that the Department of Justice has people trolling these private groups. And I have heard, don't have any proof of this, but I have heard that after they're done with all the companies and the associations and MLSs, they're going to go after individuals. You don't want to be one of those. You do not want to have to defend yourself against a government agency. So what I would say to do, listen to your broker, learn, read. I just saw something this morning that somebody said, I don't even know what's going on. What are you all talking about? Am I living under a rock? And of course, I wanted to respond, apparently a big boulder, because how on earth could you not have a clue? I mean, are you in real estate, or what are you doing? I mean, we're already known as RDR, Realtors Don't Read. And so let's not be that anymore. Let's read, let's listen, and let's do what we're supposed to do, instead of trying to figure out how not to do it and not get caught, because you really don't want to go there. But anyway, it's been interesting to see that. And I have been, like I told you, Ray, before we even started this today, if you told me to come up with 200 people who have violated antitrust in these private groups, I could do it in less than 5 minutes. That's how many there are. And it's not good. It doesn't make the rest of us look good who aren't being unprofessional. And I know some of these people think they're funny, like, oh, great idea, wish I had thought of it. You don't even want to say that if they have DOJ trolls in these private groups. But I do think they're fascinating to watch and listen and learn. But again, only do what you're supposed to do. Don't try to come up with a new way to do things.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you so much for all that. One last thing, Leslie, before we go. I know you'd mentioned something about home ownership, private property rights. Wanted to see if maybe we can kind of touch on that at the last part here, if we may.
Sure. Well, we are the voice for real estate, and we certainly want to keep it that way because we've been doing it longer and more often, I would say, because of that we certainly are the voice for private property rights and home ownership. And I wish more people, not just realtors, but the consumers, would understand the magnitude of what our profession does. And it's not just for us, it's for them too. And you know what? That's upon us to share that. Because if we don't toot our horn, who do you think is going to do it for you? So what I would recommend is that everyone goes to nar.realtor and just set aside a certain amount of time per day, whether it's 15 minutes, an hour, whatever you have, and say, I'm going to go through and I'm going to learn about professional development and advocacy today. Tomorrow, I'm going to learn about global and marketing and communications, because I'm sure you, at least I hope you are all aware of our fabulous marketing campaign. That's who we are. R as in realtor, not A-R-E. And it's been huge because that's who we are, the realtor R, that we are also familiar with. And that is one of the most recognizable logos in the world. And that's what we get to use as realtors. So my number one recommendation to you is go to nar.realtor and learn what you have that you didn't know was available to you.
Well, thank you so much. And I definitely know that within EXP Realty, that is, our brokerage does a phenomenal job at educating all of its brokers and staff on these types of legislations that are coming out. And so we're definitely able to not only be realtors, but also set ourselves above that threshold or that standard because of the
Mm-hmm.
knowledge that we're having to learn, that is sometimes required by our brokerage to do so, and it's readily available. I mean, EXP goes to the furthest extent to make sure that there's not just once a month videos, it's like every Wednesday, every Friday type videos, and they're live webinars. We have what's called kind of like a metaverse, where you log into your character, you get to go into this virtual world, and you get to sit through this auditorium, which is pretty amazing. They really went the extent to making it feel like a brick and mortar, but without being a brick and mortar. They allow us the freedom to be cloud-based agents for our agents, so we don't have like just an office. We get to meet the client in a comfortable setting, like in their homes, and talk
Mm-hmm.
with them and let them know that we are here for them.
For
And
sure.
I think that really speaks a lot to being a member of NAR, is that we have that dedication that NAR has for its realtors, consumers, sellers, and buyers. But we also exemplify that within our clients in their own homes, rather than having a seller or a buyer come into an office setting where they might not be comfortable at. I hate going into a doctor's office because I feel uncomfortable. Um, and if I go in there and not knowing, and then all this high pressure type talk is going on, I don't really have a time to sit back in my recliner and just kind of be like, well, okay, let's see here. This is, it's not like that. So when you're working with a client in their home, it's a different setting, a different atmosphere. And so thank you so much, Leslie, for you coming on today. And Ryan, I do have one more question for you on the financial side, because I wanted to get your input as well, if I may. Um, within the whole entire, a lot of, and we've kind of gone over this a little bit before, so I asked the question again. It sounds like a broken record for me and you, but for a lot of people, it may not. As far as the buyer agent representation goes, um, if a seller is not willing to pay that seller or that buyer agent commission, that buyer agent commission for their loan is not wrapped into their loan, set aside from the VA side, right? It's not.
So, as of right now, I'm not aware of anything like on a conventional type, program that would allow for a buyer to finance, that cost as that cost, like on top of whatever, the loan amount is. So, but that being said, all of the different agencies have stated that as long as that fee is standard or typical for the area, which it is right now for the seller to pay, that it won't go against what the seller is allowed to contribute for the buyer. There are some strategies that we can maybe talk about on another show, as far as like how to maybe structure an offer to make, I don't know, the seller more likely to maybe contribute to that buyer agent commission. But as well, I mean, a lot of this stuff that is coming out, like Leslie has said, is constantly changing. And so as we get further into this, I think that we might see some of these loan products that might allow for that. I expect it will happen with like smaller, lenders as they're experimenting with that type of a loan. But but yeah, I'll do some checking, regulation wise as well, and maybe on a next topic we can share some of those strategies.
Cool. And I know Ryan is dedicated to working with his clients and doing everything he can to help a lot of home buyers get into their home. And he also sets up that path, that journey to get them into their home. He doesn't just say, well, you're not qualified, sorry, next client. He sticks with you, with the buyers, and helps them get to that. He plans it out for them, lets them know, hey, this is the incomes, this is the debt to income ratios that you have to get to. And it's been a phenomenal journey to watch and learn from Ryan as well too, on the mortgage side of things and everything that goes into being a mortgage and loan officer. So definitely great to have him here as a co-host. And Leslie, was
Yeah,
there
thanks.
anything that you would like to touch on at the last part?
Well, I just want you to make sure that y'all go check out the URLs that Ray's going to put up in this when it's presented. So check those things out. It's really important, and you might learn something. One of them is about real estate commission facts.com, which tells you a lot about, the facts about, our compensation, why we ask for what we ask for, how to ask for it. And then one that I had created in 22 when I was president was the difference.realtor. What's the difference between us and a licensee, which I covered here, but there's a little bit more than what I covered there. So if you want to check that out, but all of these are things that will help you in your business, and that's what it's all about.
And then I actually did have a question, if that's all right, to jump in. Do we have time, Leslie? Are you good?
Sure.
Okay. You mentioned that like you've had people basically submit complaints to the NAR about agents potentially, make like violating certain things. But as like a member of a certain association that has, a code of ethics up and above what, a state might have, are there situations where somebody like violates that code of ethics? They are, I don't know, I mean, maybe suspended from that, NAR membership for a while, or how does that work?
Well, it depends on the violation. And right now they're working a lot on what they call the Culture Commission. And there's different arms of the Culture Commission, from the association executives and government affairs directors. And then there's a member pillar and a staff pillar, a total of 75 people. And they are working on that because I'm sure, as you know, there's been a lot in the newspaper that was kind of the precursor to all of the other things we've been talking about with the settlement and the verdict. But some other things that happened with our association, and we had two presidents resign back to back. And anyway, there's been a lot of change, but there's also a lot of good. And there's a lot of wonderful people that are involved in our association, as well as certainly our members that aren't involved. But I hope they will get involved, because I promise you, you will be a better realtor if you know what's going on. And the only way you're going to know what's going on is if you get involved and learn. But yes, there are processes in place, but there didn't used to be. And all of that was not something where you filed a complaint at NAR. It would be within your own state. Sometimes the locals handle it, sometimes the state, but everyone is different. So I really couldn't say for everybody here what it would be like. But if they need to know, they could certainly start with their local association to find out. Sometimes they can be anonymous, sometimes they can't. Again, every state is different on that as well. And some have arbitration, and sometimes there's a different path depending on where you
Gotcha.
are. So just something that you need to know on your own. But
Sure.
just remember, risk management is a huge part of what we do. And you don't want to be one of those people that gets in trouble for violating something that could cost you your license.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, personally, one of the main things I love about working with Ray is his ethical, culture, his ethical standpoint. It very much lines up with my own. And ultimately, like, I didn't even know what the difference between a realtor and a real estate agent was before I talked with Ray. I mean, I was, in this industry early 2000. So he's really opened my eyes up to a lot as well with NAR and your guys' ethical standpoint, and has really moved me to a place where if I have the ability, I would prefer work with somebody that is under NAR, that holds that same ethical, standpoint that I myself and Ray and you have, right? So, yeah, it's been awesome having you here, Leslie. I really
Oh,
appreciate
thank
your
you.
time. And
Well, just keep in mind the accessibility to all the resources I told you about, and all the ones that I didn't have time to tell you about. There's a whole lot more that I didn't tell you about than I told you about. So please go to nar.realtor and see what you're missing or what might help you in your business.
Sure, sounds good. And one last part, if I may,
Sure.
to all my realtors out there, every part of the transaction is negotiable.
That's right.
And I would have no fear about whether you're going to be guaranteed your income. I would not stress about that. I've had a couple situations myself where I've had to talk to my listing clients. And I've also represented the buyers, as a lot of realtors are doing right now. You negotiate like you have always negotiated. Nothing's changed. Just because the seller is offering and you're taking, that's, let's say, half. You're ultimately saying, hey, you're only covering about half. guess what? You as the buyer agent have to go back in and negotiate that again. It's the same as, so ultimately you got to make sure that you are negotiating every aspect of that transaction. I've heard negotiations actually go all the way down to the buyer wanting to keep the seller's dog.
Yep. There's the,
Oh,
the
that's an
thing is,
odd one.
Yeah,
people don't seem to understand that it has always been negotiable.
exactly.
It has never not been negotiable. My husband's a farm and ranch broker. And, he may have a multi-million-dollar listing that, up to the first million or two is this percent. And then the next million or two is another percent. And then it either plateaus or drops, depending on how it's negotiated. And I mean, he had one recently that was not what people would consider the norm. There is no norm. And the word standard and the word base should not even be in our vocabulary. And I see that in these private groups all the time. And that is antitrust. That is collusion. And that is why we are where we are today. Let's not keep doing what we've done wrong in the future. And I can't stress that enough. I just think that's really important that people understand. And, it's not a bad idea to go look up the word antitrust and the word collusion so you can make sure that you don't do either one because they are connected.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here today. And thank you so much, Leslie, for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you very much.